Hello there, everybody. Miss Brown here. So today is Wednesday, January 13th, and we are going to be talking about air masses and then touch on fronts a little bit. All right, so we've been talking about global winds, climate regions, and how that wind moves the weather. So today we're going to go a little bit more in depth. All right, but first, let's talk about why is the temperate region warm. So we know that there are three climate regions. We have the tropical, the temperate, and the polar. The tropical is really, really hot and humid. The polar, it's really cold, and then the temperate is the best of both worlds. So I want you to think about it. Pause this video and think about why is the temperate region warm? All right. So it's in the middle of the polar and the tropical region. So we always say it's the best of both worlds. So you have that heated water coming from the tropical region, and you have that cooler water coming from the polar region, and they're kind of mixing together, making the best of both worlds. So we have that constant circulation, and we know that when that warm air rises, that cool air sinks. Warm air rises, cool air sinks. That constant circulation is what? We talked about it when we talked about energy and heat transfer. It starts with the C. Convection. Yes, convection. So convection says warm air rises, cool air sinks. And so that is what's creating that temperate region to be warm. We have that cool air and that warm air, those cool waters and warm waters coming together and creating the temperate region. All right, so let's talk about air masses. Air masses are huge bodies of air that form over water or land in the tropical and polar regions. So when you think of air, we think of air. We breathe air. We need air to be able to breathe. And when you think of masses, if I were to say there was a mass of zebra, that was so random. I don't know what made me think of zebra. But if I were to say there were a mass amount of zebra in my classroom, that means there is a lot. If I were to say there were a massive amount of people standing in New York City, that means it's a lot. So air masses are huge bodies of water that form over water or land. That's key. They either form over water or land in the tropical and polar regions. All right. So mass, like I said, it's a large amount in one space. All right, and an air mass is a lot of those air particles in one space. So we have four different types of air masses. We have maritime polar. So if I think of maritime, what is that root word? The root word is marry. When I think of MARI, what other words have I seen or heard of when I see Mary? I know one is Marine, and I know people who are in the Marines, like the military people who are in the Marines, they deal in water. What's another one? That's honestly actually all I can think of. All right, but maritime is water. So maritime is water. So maritime polar, we have maritime, which means water. Then we have polar. We know that polar is cold. So that air that is going to be in a maritime polar air mass, it's going to be cold and humid. Remember, humidity means just that moisture that is in the air. So it's going to be cold and humid. Then we also have maritime tropical. So we know that it's going to be in the water, but instead of it being cold, it's going to be what? Hot, warm. So maritime tropical air mass is going to be warm and humid. All right. Then we have continental. So when I think of continental, I think of a continent, and I know that on continents there is land. So land is on, excuse me, continental air masses are on land, maritime air masses are on water. So I'm going to write that down. Maritime on water, continental on land. All right, so if there is a continental polar air mass, I know that it's going to be on land, and I know that it's going to be cold because remember, polar means cold. So it's going to be cold, dry air. Continental tropical is going to be the complete opposite. It's still going to be over land, so it's still going to be dry. It's not going to be wet because it's not in water. It's going to be warm and dry. All right. So maritime polar, cold and wet. Maritime tropical, warm and wet. Continental polar, dry and cold. And continental tropical, warm and dry. All right. So now, oh, there it is. I know I had a. All right, so continental air mass over land, maritime is an air mass over water. All right, feel free to pause this video to write down your notes, rewind, do whatever you need to do. All right, next we have a table. So if it's on land, that means it's going to be dry, and if it's warm, and if it's on land, it's going to be dry, and if it's in the tropical region, it's going to be warm. So when you bring those together, you have the continental tropical. If it's on land and it's cold continental polar. If it's in water and it's in tropical region, it's going to be maritime polar. And then if the air mass is in water and it's cold, then it's going to be maritime polar. That's just a table to kind of give you a better idea and another visual to see the 4 different air masses. All right, but now we're going to look at this map and we are going to fill in what type of weather would we suspect and what type of air mass. So if I'm running over my sweater here, guys, sorry. All right, so I'm looking in Canada. So Canada is all the way up here. Let me choose a different color. Canada is right here. All right. What type of weather? Let's first think, is it going to be maritime or polar? I mean, not maritime or polar. Maritime or continental. So is Canada over land or is it over water? We know that it is continental because Canada is land. Canada is land. All right. And then is it in the tropical region or the polar region? So it's up north. So that is going to be the polar region. So I am going to write a small c and a big P. All right, because I know that it is continental polar. So if it's continental polar, what is that weather going to be like? So I'm going to go back to my table. And I know I'm going to look. So, okay, it's continental, so it's going to be dry. And then it's polar, so it's going to be cold. All right. The next one is the North Atlantic Ocean. So that's a key word right there, North Atlantic Ocean. All right. Is it over land or is it over water? Is this air mass over land or over water? If it's in the ocean, is it going to be land or water? Water. So we're looking at maritime. All right. And is it maritime polar or maritime tropical? This is a little hard, but it's actually maritime polar. All right. That water is going to be way cooler in the northern Atlantic. So like up in here. All right. So that northern Atlantic is going to be maritime polar. So I'm going to circle right here. And what is my weather going to be like? If it's maritime, I know that it's going to be humid because it's with water. It's over water. And then polar, it is cold. All right. Now we're looking at the South Atlantic. South Atlantic. I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to answer this one by yourself. So pause the video, answer this one by yourself, and then come back to see if you got the right answer. All right, so our South Atlantic, we know that it is over water, so that it's maritime. Since it's in the south, it's a little bit warmer, so it is tropical, maritime tropical. We know that that weather in maritime, it's going to be humid, so I'm going to put humid. And it's tropical, so it is going to be warm. All right, the last one, Ecuador. Ecuador is right here. All right, Ecuador, is that over land or water? And what is the associated weather? Pause the video, answer this question on your own, and then press play and come back and see if you got the right answer. All right, so Ecuador, we know that it is over land, so I'm going to put a little C. All right, and it is in the south, so I'm going to say that that is tropical. So it's in the south, it has that tropical weather. It's in the tropical region. So it is continental tropical. So I know that if it's continental tropical, that weather it's going to be dry and warm. All right. So remember, if it's over land, it's continental. If it's over water, it's maritime and it's humid. Over land, it's going to be dry. There's no water. When you think of land, if it doesn't rain, let's say there's no rain, there's no rivers, lakes, it's just the land. It's dry. All right. But over water in the ocean, maritime, that is humid. So it's going to be humid over there. All right. Polar is cold, tropical is warm. Okay. So air masses continued. Temperature and humidity determine the air mass. So we see that. We know that if it's cold, it's going to be polar. We know that if it's warm and hot, it's going to be tropical. We know that if it's humid, that means it's going to be maritime. But if it's no humidity, then it's going to be a continental air mass. All right. So temperature and humidity determine the air mass. That is super important. As air masses move, because we know that wind moves weather. So that wind is causing these air masses to move and they collide. Collide means they kind of bump into each other. They intertangle. All right. Fronts form. So as air masses move, fronts form at the boundaries between the air masses. So we have, let's say we have a continental polar and a maritime polar, and they're coming together and smack dab in the middle. So smack dab, my pen is the front, all right? My pen is in between both of those air masses. And there are 4 different types of fronts, all right? I'm just gonna introduce them today, and then next week we're gonna go more in depth. So we have a warm front, a cold front, a stationary front, and an occluded front, all right? So, like I said, we're going to go more in depth with these next week, but I want you to pay attention. Go to like the Weather Channel or listen to the news. And I want you to look out for these terms. Look out to see if you hear the meteorologists say we have a cold front and a warm front coming together. All right. I want you to look at a weather map and see if you see cold fronts or any type of fronts on the weather maps. All right. So after you watch this instructional video, go ahead and go back into Schoology and complete the air masses worksheet. All right. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Bye, guys. See y'all tomorrow in class.